Welcome, fellow chamber members and guests. Over the last 40 years, the chamber has hosted a number of events in order to bring you information on key issues and ballot measures that are coming forward. The issues you hear about today were reviewed by our Government Affairs Committee and have been identified as prominent ballot issues that have direct impact on our businesses and on our community. The Government Affairs Committee has looked at these issues and will be making recommendations to our Board of Directors. And in the coming weeks, the Board will be issuing ballot positions for your review. But keep in mind that there are other issues on the ballot this year that we will not be reviewing or taking positions on. It's now my pleasure to introduce and welcome back Jim Seidlecki. Jim is the Director of Public Information for Adams County. His background includes more than 2 decades as a journalist, including 15 years as a television news anchor. Jim and his wife Kim live in Thornton with their 3 children, and Jim has graciously hosted our forums for almost 5 years, always offering a lively and fair conversation. We're thrilled to have him back with us today to discuss the issues. Please give Jim a round of applause as he comes up to the stage.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, everyone, for having me back. We really do appreciate the opportunity to get so many people together, and as Ed mentioned, I did television news for a while. When I left, I was doing morning television, and this morning, thankfully, I kept that habit this time as a viewer. Otherwise, I'd been about 45 minutes late. There was a huge crash. I don't know if it kept anybody from getting here on time, but thankfully, I was watching TV this morning as I was getting dressed, learned about a crash. And that Waze app always comes in handy. I know that Cammie and I were joking about that before. We have a bit of a different forum this morning than what a lot of you are accustomed to with these breakfasts, where we get together and we hear from 2 candidates. But with a ballot that's probably longer than a CVS receipt this year, it's really important that we talk about some of these questions that we're all going to face. And as a government that has not only been on ballots, and I've written ballot questions myself before, it's a challenge to try and keep people's attention all the way through. And I think it's a really good opportunity that we have here this morning. We're going to discuss 8 issues, and we're also going to meet District 7 congressional candidates. But before we get started, I want to give you additional context for the process. The Arvada Chamber strives to offer fair conversations and extended an invitation to both the proponents and the opposition on each of those issues that we discussed. In some cases, there was no formalized opposition. And we defined formal opposition as a convened group of people who have identified clear consensus around concerns. On your tables, you're going to find a ballot measure worksheet. If you feel inspired, feel free, jot down your thoughts on what you're thinking and hearing. This is for you only. We recognize that you will be drinking from the fire hose throughout the morning. We want to support you with this tool if it is helpful. Each campaign for and against any issue will receive 5 minutes to tell you why you should vote for their position. We will keep time, and we're going to hold speakers to that time. Cammie will have signs over here on the table where you see the projector indicating 1 minute. So as you see those come up, make sure you respect those time parameters that we have put in place. We are going to begin this morning with debt reauthorization. Debt reauthorization for Arvada, 2 big projects, no new taxes. The proponent, Mark Williams, Mayor Mark Williams, and T.O. Owens. Gentlemen.
Thank you for that, and let me tell you how I want you to vote. Yes on 3F, but most importantly, start at the bottom of the ballot and work your way up, because the local issues are the issues that impact each of us so much. So even though I have great respect for our congressman, you'll get to him eventually on the ballot. But start at the bottom of the ballot. So why are we doing this? It's because we've paid off our bonds on 72nd Avenue. We paid them off, and so we have $4 million a year. Those $4 million a year don't get sent back to the citizens, unfortunately. We just can't do it. We've got an obligation to use those dollars for capital improvement projects. So, from the government perspective, We're not looking for any tax increase on this measure. It's to have the authority to issue bonds. And through great work from city council members, including Mark McGough and Nancy Ford, city council, by a unanimous vote, said, let's go to our citizens, ask if we can authorize these bonds. Now, that's the government side of it, but I want to turn it over to T.O. Owens, who's agreed to chair our committee. T.O.'s a great citizen of our community, serves on the Planning Commission, and has done a great job in moving this issue forward. So I'm going to turn it over to T.O. to tell you a little bit more about the specific projects and why you should vote yes on 3F. T.O.
Thank you. I want to start with Mark's first campaign slogan. Suggestion for our campaign slogan was bottoms up for safety. We thought maybe not the best idea, bottoms up for safety. So I served on the last two capital improvement committee, and Ralston Road was the #1 issue in both cases. And 72nd was also a highly rated issue. On Ralston Road, we're going to widen Ralston Road between Yukon and Garrison and provide sidewalks. I don't know if any of you have walked Ralston Road. I would encourage everyone to walk Ralston Road. Go with a batting helmet and maybe a bat to try to keep the mirrors away from you. Obviously, citizens have thought for a long time that was important, because 10 years ago we identified that as the #1 issue. 72nd, we're going to widen 72nd between Kipling and Kipling and Sims, take 72nd under the railroad tracks and provide bike lanes and sidewalks. We have a school at 72nd and Oak, and that board has resolved to support the issue as well. As Mark said, we're not going to raise taxes. We're simply asking for an authorization to let these bonds. We'll be outside. I've got some literature if you'd like to read about it. If you'd like a yard sign, let me know. I'll get you one. And of course, I'll take a check. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Mayor and T.O., thank you very much. There is no formal opposition in this case, so we're going to move to our, I think it's 73 that we're going to lead off with. And I want to, before I invite those folks up to discuss things, a reminder that we're going to have a few of these, so 7 more. When you make your way to the podium, reiterate who you are and what your stance is so that folks are clear before you begin presenting. So Amendment 73 is what we're going to discuss next. Proponent is Roberta Ritvo.
Good morning. My name is Roberta Ritvo. I am not a parent. I'm not a teacher. I'm just a volunteer with the campaign who believes that strong schools are important for our great state and our strong economy. So Colorado is going gangbusters, and 73 is the door that is going to open, is the key that's going to open the door between our great economy and our severely underfunded schools. You can see the numbers up here. Our per pupil funding puts us near the bottom when you list all the states out. Mississippi and Alabama are ahead of us. Raising the money that we're getting is going to go to the local school districts. This is a really important part of the initiative. The money goes into a sequestered fund. It cannot be touched by the politicians. It goes straight out to school districts, and for transparency and accountability, they are telling us now how they're going to spend the money by passing resolutions, and we're posting them online. Jeffco's was actually passed about a month ago, and the first thing that they say is that they're going to put half the money towards attracting and retaining quality teachers and staff. And that's really important because Colorado teachers are among the worst paid in the country. 95% of our rural area teachers cannot support themselves with their salaries. And the shortages that we've heard about across the state come from the fact that we are underpaying our teachers. Now, this is an issue campaign, so there's a lot of claims being bandied about. One of them is that we are taking money away from local districts like the fire districts or the libraries or the arts. And this is simply not true. In order to pass the single subject requirement, we had to carefully write our initiative to impact only public school funding. Ledge Council issued a fiscal note which says we're not impacting local governments, and during the extensive Blue Book process, this was brought up again and found to be not true. What we are doing is raising $1.6 billion for schools. That sounds like a lot of money, especially when you put all those zeros on the ballot. However, there are 900,000 students in Colorado. So this is going to help close the gap, but it's not going to put us even fully at the 2,800 deficit that we're at. Jeffco is going to look at about $1,600 more per student. Every district will see more money per student, and then the formulas that take into factor students that are more expensive to educate are also going to send more money to the schools based on the profiles of their schools, of their students. So the money's going to come from an individual income tax increase. It starts at $150,000 of taxable income. That means after all of the deductions. And you can see the brackets up here, and you can see the rates and the average impact. Now, one of the other things that's being said is that we're turning Colorado into an incredibly high tax state, and that income tax rates are going to put us among the most expensive in the country. Our top rate is going to kick in only at $500,000. So it only applies to the money for the top 1% and only on the earnings above $500,000. So people who live here are still going to pay significantly less than in New York or California or even Montana. The other thing is that we are raising the corporate tax rate, the C Corp rate, to 6%. We're not changing who pays the C Corp rate. We're not impacting pass-through businesses. This is only the rate that C Corps are going to pay. And when you put it with the federal tax reform from 2017, businesses are still coming out ahead. Our new rate of 6% will keep us in line with the states around us, and Colorado will move from being the third lowest C Corp rate in the country to the 9th lowest, so we are still a business-friendly state. Now, these changes are in the statutes, but the reason we're called Amendment 73 is because we are also changing the Gallagher Amendment, so we're amending an amendment, and that is about our property tax rates, and you're going to hear a lot more about this when you hear from the fire district. The important thing to know is that we are giving businesses, corporations that own their properties, farms, ranches, a 5% tax decrease. They've been paying 29% since Gallagher was enacted in 1982. And for the portion of property taxes that goes to the schools, which is a specific line item, those rates are going to stay frozen at the rates shown here. And that will provide a more steady stream of funding to the schools. Otherwise, the Gallagher rate would continue to go down, and the schools would continue to get less money from property taxes. You can see here the gap between the share of funding for the schools that's been coming from property taxes versus what's been coming from the state and how much the state's share has increased. We are, never mind. So, thank you for your time. I'm out of time, but we will be here, and Jonna Levine from Support Jeffco Kids is with me as well, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
We're going to stick with Amendment 73, providing opposition remarks. Divya. Dave?
Good morning. My name is Dave Divya, and I am here on behalf of No on 73. I was born and raised in Arvada, went to Arvada High School right down the street here, and I want to thank Cammie Welsh, Preston Branna, and Mike McCarron for putting this together today and having us here. So what I hope to walk you through today is the facts, the true facts around 73. 73 will provide a $1.6 billion tax increase to the taxpayers. It will also be the largest tax increase that Colorado has seen. It locks this initiative into the Constitution. It permanently removes all education dollars from within the Tabor cap and puts it in its own dedicated bucket. We do agree with that. Colorado has enjoyed a 4.63% income tax rate and a corporate tax rate. Here's where we somewhat disagree. 73 is a deception. The way it's written in the Blue Book is a deception on the information that's being shared with the taxpayers. It is proclaimed that it will be a 1.37% income tax increase on corporate taxes. However, that's 1.37 percentage points. On the taxpayer side, we do agree with the tax brackets that were given, but what I would tell you is it's not $150,000 for a single income earner, it's a dual income earner. So the 8% we believe is a much greater number. We also want you to know on the property tax side that currently the property tax mill rate next year is due to go from 7.2 to 6.11%. That will change if Amendment 73 is passed to a flat tax of 7%. What that does is it takes those funds and also puts them in that dedicated funding pool. This is being billed as a tax the rich or tax the wealthy. The unfortunate part is when this thing is put into the state's constitution, today if a dual income family earners are at $130,000 or $140,000, over time they will graduate into that $150,000 tax bracket, and each year more and more Coloradans will be faced with paying a higher tax rate. At the low end, it is a 0.37% percentage point increase, but it goes from 4.63 to 5%. There are two more brackets, and at the top, it becomes an 8.25% tax state income tax. The chart on the screen here shows you how we compare to our surrounding states. If this were to pass, we would be the highest in the Rocky Mountain region. Our neighbor to the north does not have a tax. Amendment 73 kind of blows the limits off the Tabor cap. Tabor is something that a lot of us really hold value in our hearts, in our checkbooks, and each year we like to exercise our rights to take a look at what's on the ballot and make decisions. If 73 passes, money will then be moved from the state's general fund into its own dedicated fund, which the net is then the state legislature, while today has about 10% of the overall state general fund to allocate, that number will grow over time. We do believe that this impacts rural and municipal services. I'm a former city councilor for the city of Westminster up the street here. We think that taking the money out from the general fund and putting it in its own dedicated pot does impact, and we're seeing county assessors, fire chiefs, and others start to study this in a way that is, thank you, Cammie, is confirming our thoughts. This is the big piece here, and I'm going to go right down to the bottom of the slide. So you heard that the C Corps will see a tax increase of 30%. S Corps and LLCs will as well, because that is pass-through income. So in this example, $2 million to a small business will pay an additional $60,000 in taxes if this passes, versus your large corporations will pay $20. In the spirit of time, I want to go to this slide. So this shows you since 1970, the top line is cost, the second line is employees, and the dotted line along the bottom is enrollment. The other lines across the bottom are achievement scores. So there's 120,000 people in Colorado in education, 54,000 of them are teachers. We believe that $1.6 billion will not be allocated appropriately, and we ask you to vote no on 73. I'll be out in the hall to ask or answer any questions you might have. There's our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Quite a few interesting ballot questions for us to entertain this year as we sift through from bottom up, of course. Next on the list, Proposition 112, and Jenna Hardin is the proponent.
Let's see if I can see over this podium. I'm Jenna Hardin, and I'm with Colorado Rising, and I'm here to urge you to vote yes for 112. I'm volunteering for this. Let's see, I think that's the wrong slide. I think you got to go back. I'm volunteering for this campaign because I have a strong sense of duty to pass on clean air, clean water, and a healthy climate to future generations, and even to the generations that are still with us here, like me. In addition, I feel a strong need to protect what I consider just an incredible gift that we've been all given in this planet Earth. So, let's see, I'm sorry, this is what I'm using here. This is not a ban. These are common sense regulations that are similar to other restrictions on other heavy industries that are not allowed in our neighborhoods. We have over 50,000 active wells in Colorado. These won't be affected by 112. They'll continue to employ people. Each fracked well uses 2 to 12 million gallons of water mixed with toxins. After being pumped in along with natural gas, chemicals come up and into the air. This water can never be used for drinking or irrigation again. And if only 1% of Colorado's water is used for fracking, which is about right, it would only take 100 years for fracking alone to use up all of our water. So though 1% sounds minimal, because it's permanently taken out of the water cycle, it's gone forever. And of course, earthquakes are caused by pumping this toxic water back into the ground. Our current setbacks are only 500 feet from homes and 1,000 feet from high occupancy buildings like schools. And that's from the actual walls, not the playgrounds. Here's Bella Romero, where the playground is 600 feet from planned 24 wells, plus accompanying other industrial equipment. There's no evidence that the current setbacks are supportive of public health and safety. And of course, we all remember Firestone. There have been 15 explosions since then. Some of them have caused deaths. So why 2,500 feet setback? When explosion, when we're at risk, when there's a leak and we're at risk for an explosion, the emergency workers evacuate the area at least 2,500 feet from the source. And benzene, of which there is no safe exposure level, dissipates. It takes about 2,500 feet for benzene to dissipate to the ambient atmospheric level. And of course, it's sometimes what we don't see that are the scariest. Here, the slide on the bottom, the picture on the bottom shows the air above the high school in Greeley. There are many health effects of fracking. The research is clear, and there is a lot of it. The Nobel Prize-winning Physicians for Social Responsibility, a representative of which is here today, will be happy to talk with you afterwards. Within 1/2 of a mile, health impacts are greatest. Among babies that live near oil and gas well pads, there is a 25% lower birth weight, which impacts their lives forever, and children are up to 4 times more likely to get childhood leukemia. We can't depend upon state regulators of oil and gas to protect us. They always side with oil and gas. They have never denied a permit. And so despite how we are portrayed at times, we're really local Coloradans that are concerned about what we pass on to future generations. And we ask for your vote. Thank you.
It's a good strategy to take the remote with you, though. It was a good idea. This isn't my first rodeo, though. I've seen these tricks. John Bracken is providing the opposition to Proposition 112. John?
What a complete honor to be with you today. I'm John Bracken, and I'm a Coloradoan, and I'm a trail runner. Any other runners or trail runners in the room today? So for the folks that appreciate the Colorado mountains, also the trails here in the urban area, nothing is more important to me than clean air. And the good news is our air over the last century has continued to improve, and so is our water. Congressman, how are you? But before I start, I represent Metro Energy. And Metro Energy is a collaboration of people that would like to make sure that we all understand all the above energy policy. So if you care about the environment, if you care about water, if you care about health, I urge you to support all the above energy policy. We are the envy of the world. We've got solar, we've got wind, and we've got one of the best oil and natural gas producing fields in the world. And when we produce our own energy here, we allow people on the smaller and the shorter end of the spectrum that haven't yet made it. When we keep energy prices low, we create opportunity for jobs and economic development across the entire spectrum. When we keep energy costs low, we keep our young men and women from having to go over to the Middle East and fight for oil and energy policies that we can extract from our own environment. Folks, we are extremely fortunate, and we're about ready to blow it. If you care about the environment, I'm with you. If you care about jobs, though, you have to oppose this initiative. Proposition 112 is a job killer. First year alone, 50,000 jobs are anticipated to be lost. That's next year if we pass this in the ballot this fall. Please don't mistake, understand this. It is a de facto ban. 85% of all those oil fields in Colorado are going to be off limits because the radius of 2,500 feet is in all directions. And when you add hundreds of thousands of areas that are potentially vulnerable or an occupied building, and you keep adding all those together, it's a complete circle. If you look at the flyer that I left on your table, that's what's going to be off limits in Colorado. So what happens when you take this red area, 85% of the state, but the top 5 producing counties, goes to 94% will be off limits. Well, 147,000 jobs in Colorado will be lost over 12 years. 169 to 217 billion dollars, $7 to $9 billion of taxes that go to all of us. So here's my offer to you all. We need to do a better job in conversation. So here's my email, John Brackney, JOHN, at webolutions.com, WEBOLUTIONS.com. I promise each and every one of you, if you have any questions about our economy, about the jobs, about our neighbors who are going to lose their jobs, about the advantages of all the above energy policy, I promise I'm going to get you the answers and have a conversation with you in the next month. It's really important. I'll wake up early and I'll stay up late. Every single one of us in this room should oppose Proposition 112, just like Governor Hickenlooper, just like Lieutenant Governor Lynn, just like both candidates for governor. We must do a better job in this. Second, I'll take you on a rig tour if you'd like. It's what convinced me this is important. And third, if you're interested, I'd like you to become a Bighorn Fellow on Energy Policy. Thank you so much for caring about your environment.
All right, let's move to Proposition 110. Proposition 110 on the ballot. And the proponent today is Tony Milo. Tony?
Thanks for the invitation to be here. Appreciate y'all taking the time to get up to date. It's great that the chamber is doing this. So many important issues on the ballot this year, and it's quite complicated and quite confusing. I'm Tony Milo. I'm Executive Director of the Colorado Contractors Association, here representing Let's Go Colorado, Yes on 110. Take you back just about almost 30 years ago. Remember 1991? George H.W. Bush was president. That was the first George Bush. The Ford Pintos were still around, and smartphones didn't exist. It was a long time ago. 1991 was also the last time transportation funding got a real boost here in Colorado. That's when we set our gas tax at 22 cents per gallon. We were spending about $126 per driver on transportation, and our population was 3.4 million people. Fast forward almost 30 years to 2018, our population is now 5.6 million people. We spend about $69 per driver across Colorado, about half of what we spent nearly 30 years ago. What does that lead to? Everyone knows we've got congestion up and down the Front Range everywhere in Colorado. It's costing Colorado motorists almost $2,000 a year sitting in traffic in wear and tear on their vehicles. That's a hidden tax that every Coloradan is paying every year for sitting in congestion and driving on bad roads. CDOT's got a $9 billion unfunded project list. The Colorado Municipal League recently estimated about $3 billion in needs in every city in the state, and then every county also has just as many needs in transportation as CDOT and the cities. And still, our gas tax is 22 cents a gallon. So what we're asking for with 110 is a 0.6% sales tax increase for 20 years dedicated to transportation. That's 6 cents on a $10 purchase. What will that buy us? About $700 million the first year. It's going to go right into the Highway User Tax Fund. It's going to be locked and dedicated for transportation. It's going to allow CDOT to bond for $6 billion to accelerate high priority projects, and it's going to sunset in 20 years. It raises enough to really address the problem. It's a small amount paid by everybody that really adds up, and everyone pays the same rate, including tourists. Here's a quick glimpse at our statewide coalition. We've got over 400 individuals and statewide organizations endorsing Prop 110. It's growing every day. How will the money be distributed? 45% will go to CDOT, 20% to cities, 20% to counties, and 15% to a multimodal fund that can be used statewide for everything from dial-a-rides for senior citizens to bus service right here in Arvada. Go through this quickly. So that's our website is letsgocolorado.com. We appreciate your support. We'd love to have the Arvada Chamber's support for this. Every city and county across the state is going to nearly double the amount of money they're going to get for their transportation revenue every single year. And that really matters. There is another proposition on the ballot. It's only going to address about $2 billion of CDOT's project list. It's going to do nothing for the cities, nothing for the counties. It's not going to solve our transportation problem. If we really are serious about solving our issue, 110 is the answer. I would love for you to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. This obviously, transportation, a huge issue in Colorado. We were in Congressman Perlmutter's office in March with the county commissioners, and I think we spent half the time discussing it then. We also talked about spaceport, by the way. That worked out really well. I don't know if you saw the Denver Post, but there is a Boulder company that has operations in Glasgow and operations around the world. They announced this week that due to the spaceport license coming to the metro region in Adams County, that they are going to move a lot more of their operation here. So already, within 1 month of securing the license, it's already delivering on jobs. It's a really important and innovative process, and we're really proud of it. All right, so we're going to stick with roads for just a moment, and there's a marketing initiative, as you can tell with some of these, right? So sadly, Fix Our Damn Roads, marketing team worked hard on that one, was unable to find someone to speak at the event. An overview handout is available from the chamber. We'll pass that around. Alternate ballot measure with Let's Go Colorado. No formal opposition on that as well, so we're going to go to amendments Y and Z. A proponent for Y and Z is Phillip. Alan?
Hi, good morning. This is a twofer. You get Y and Z out of the way at the same time, but appreciate the opportunity. Fair Mass for Colorado. My name is Phillip, and we appreciate the Arvada Chamber's support for Y and Z. I know you're still working through your deliberations on a lot of them, but Y and Z has been endorsed. Real briefly, I'm going to talk about, oh, here's the clicker, sorry. The current problem in Colorado and our solution and who we are. In Colorado, you think about redistricting. Here's the challenge. We are a state that is not really red or blue. We are quote unquote kind of purple, but we have very few purple districts, so to speak, very few districts that either party can win. For example, the state house, we have 65 house districts. Anybody want to hazard a guess how many of those 65 have changed parties this decade? 3. 3 out of 65. The other 62 have been locked in for one party or the other. Maybe 1 or 2 more will change hands this cycle. But what you end up with, and here's kind of the indictment of the current system, is very few competitive seats, and almost all of them are decided in a primary. You end up with incumbents who are kind of responsive to their primary voters as opposed to the broader general electorate. So you're not going to make every district competitive. We want to draw districts that are representative of our communities, but we should have more competitive districts, and we should have less polarization as a result of representatives who have to represent a broader constituency. So these 2 measures were placed on the ballot by a unanimous vote of the legislature. That you can't even rename a post office and get a unanimous vote nowadays. So this was pretty remarkable. Both sides came together. Y is congressional redistricting reform. Z is legislative. They are almost identical. Question is, why do we have to have 2? The Colorado Supreme Court ruled that these were 2 separate subjects, so we have to have 2. Very briefly, here's what we did. We have 5 core principles that have united us from day one in this process. One is we wanted to create a balanced 4-4-4 commission. There's actually 2 commissions, 1 congressional, 1 legislative. These are not tied or linked together, but 4-4-4. We wanted the unaffiliates as much as possible to be non-agents of either party. We want them to be really the decision makers in the process in a lot of respects. Drive consensus building through a supermajority requirement, including 8 out of 12 and 2 of the unaffiliates, so the Republicans and the Democrats cannot team up to draw an incumbent protection map. Third is clear criteria for map drawing and prohibitions on gerrymandering, things like don't split counties, cities, communities of interest, compactness, and then when possible, draw competitive districts. So we're not, the competitive districts is if you can do it, great. So instead of 3, we should have more like 20, 25 state house districts that are competitive. And then next thing here is nonpartisan staff drawn maps. This is an idea borrowed from the state of Iowa, where instead of the political partisans that have been drawing the maps, we have nonpartisan staff do it. Here's the thing, on congressional redistricting, we've had a Denver district court decide the maps for most of the last 40 years. And the problem with that is it's not really fair to the rest of the state. You're putting one person in a very difficult position of having to pick a map that's drawn by partisans. So we wanted to get away from that. That's where we get the nonpartisan staff drawing the maps. They propose them to the commission. And if the commission has a stalemate and they can't pass a map, a nonpartisan staff drawn map becomes law. Really holds both parties' feet to the fire because no one wants to roll the dice on that. Finally, is open meetings, open records, and a 72-hour requirement after a map is introduced before it can be passed. So the reason for this is that what we've seen at the Legislative Reapportionment Commission that draws the maps right now is you go through this ostensibly open and public process for 6 to 8 months, and then with hours to spare, 6 of the 11 commissioners walk in with a map that's never seen the light of day and ram it through. So we wanted to get away from that. Okay, I'm not going to go through that, but these are the criteria that we will put into the Constitution to ensure that the nonpartisan staff have criteria by which to draw maps. This is our coalition. We've got everybody from Independence Institute, Centennial Institute on the right, John Andrews, John Caldera, to Common Cause, several unions, and then a lot of the business groups, Arvada Chamber, and many others. And 55%, our real opponent here is getting to 55. Only 15% have reached, only 15% reach 55%. Please help us. We need your support. Fairmaps.co. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Alan. We have no formal opposition to amendments Y and Z, so we're going to move to 5A and 5B. And a reminder to everyone, as you come to the podium, please represent yourself, your name, your position on each issue. Let's go with 5A and Jill Fellman. Jill Fellman's up first.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Go Arvada! Woohoo! I want to talk to you about 5A and 5B. Now, Friends talked about Amendment 73, which is raising the tax rate across our state for education. 5A and 5B is local, Jeffco specific. And so why am I supporting this? Why did I get wrangled into this? Am I not done with campaigns? Well, let me tell you, we have the best kids in the world right here in Arvada, right here in Jeffco. And those best kids deserve the very best schools. They deserve the very best teachers, the very best resources, and that's what we're looking for. A couple of years ago, Ken and I were so excited when our first granddaughter was born. She's now 2. Her favorite thing is Minnie Mouse. So yay, Minnie Mouse. We've got ears, say cheers. But you know, here's the thing. She deserves the very best schools. And we want to make sure that 5A and 5B pass so that we have that competitive edge, so that we know that our schools are going to be able to fund what she needs for her future, not my future, her future. So why does Jeffco need some money? Let's talk about Jeffco. The first thing is, and I love this slide, now we have the best kids. Remember that. That's the premise, right? We've got the best kids. Tell me that Denver's kids deserve $1,400 more per kid in funding? Really? Now, some of those kids are very hard to educate. I'll grant them that. But $1,000 more in Boulder, $1,000 more per student than what we have. That really, this slide speaks to me about why we need some extra money. We are not hitting that competitive edge. Okay. Then if you look at salaries, now, you know what, beginning salaries, we have really in Jeffco made some moves and some strides, and we're pretty competitive at the beginning level. But after 10 years with a master's degree, we're pretty low in comparison. And you know what? If I was a teacher with a 10-year master's degree and I could drive to Boulder, which is just not too far from here, and get $7,500 more per year, I might try to do that. So this is really about that. Why do we need 5B? B stands for bond, buildings, okay? Our buildings on average are 50 years old. If you look at Arvada, the city of Arvada, we have on the east side some crumbling buildings. On the west side, we have some new buildings, but we've got everything in between. We also have extreme growth in our west area. We need some new buildings. We need some more seats in our high schools. If you go on the Jeffco website, it is an incredible, lots of information about what your school, what your area will get for 5A and 5B. This slide is really cool because what it talks about is you see the articulation. You can't read that. It's way too tiny. I can't read that. But if you go on the website, you will see all the different things that your school is going to get. Here's some things for Arvada, just so you know, some specifics. $130 million in facilities. One thing I want to point out, and I'm not going to read everything on here, is we have one of the nation, we have an incredible program here, thanks to Cammie Welch, our chamber director, and that's Arvada Works. And we need to support that. We need that in Arvada to support our kids. So how much is it going to cost you? Okay, it's all based on assessed value, right? And if you look at an average home being about $300,000, it's going to cost the average homeowner about $11. Somebody says, well, what about the marijuana money? Isn't that going to solve all our problems? Well, not really, because in Colorado, this is statewide. There's only $90 million for marijuana. So I want you to support 3A and 3B, or 5A and 5B, I'm sorry, it used to be 3A and 3B. And thank you so much for your time. I so enjoy being up here with you.
Thank you, Jill. Providing opposition for 5A and 5B, Laura Boggs.
Good morning, Arvada. How are you guys doing this morning? All right. Good morning, Arvada. How are you guys doing this morning? All right, much better. How many of you are Jeffco Public School graduates? Awesome. How many of you have children in Jeffco Public Schools? Awesome. How many of you would like to have your grandchildren come back to Jeffco and have great schools? Me too. So I unfortunately have the position of telling you some of the reasons why I encourage you to vote no on 5A and 5B. And those are the local tax issues. Now, my good friend Jill and I agree on a lot of things. My children are Jeffco Public School kiddos. My husband's a Jeffco Public School guy. I love Jeffco Public Schools. My mom was a public school teacher for 30 years of her life. Hooray for all the teachers out there, right? So we know with 100% certainty that the Mr. Smileys of the world and the Mr. Fraylings of the world, both great Arvada teachers, deserve to be paid well. So the question is, does 5A do that? Well, it's a $33 million a year and growing because it's indexed to inflation. Not our home values, but inflation. So even if we experience declining enrollment in Jeffco Public Schools, as long as inflation keeps growing, that amount keeps growing. How much of that is actually going to go to our teachers and our great staff here in Jeffco Public Schools? Well, we know they have said that only half of it is going to go to pay great teachers. Now, you saw that beautiful slide that Jill put up, and our entry-level teachers in Jeffco only make $39,000 a year. Think about your children. Would they go to work for only $39,000 a year? I don't think so. If this measure was truly going to raise entry-level salaries for our public school teachers, or bring them all up to $50,000 a year or more, so they truly could have great lives, buy the groceries that they need, and live in our communities. How many know housing is more expensive than it used to be in Colorado? Exactly. So for me, it's not that I don't want more money in public schools, it's how is this money going to be spent? Over the last couple of years, Jeffco Public Schools has received about $1,100 more per student. Where is that money going? Well, we know statewide from our friends with Amendment 73 that the student growth in Colorado and the teacher growth in Colorado run about 8% and 6%, but bureaucracy and administrative overhead has grown at more than 30%. That's not the appropriate balance for our public schools. So I encourage you to send our school board back to the drawing board and come back to us as taxpayers with a plan that truly does support our great staff. Now let's transition to 5B, which is a bond and is $1 billion, nearly $997 million is what your ballot will say it will cost us to pay back. So let's talk about Arvada. How many of you know there's growth on the Northwest Corridor in Arvada? Harder to get around, right? Arvada is great, growing city, but there are no new schools in the bond. And I do encourage you, just as Ms. Feldman did, go and look at what we're actually doing for schools, because the amount that's posted on the website adds up to the $567 million they're asking for. If they want to add new schools, that's great, but then we as taxpayers have to ask ourselves, what will be taken out? For my children, for your children, for our grandchildren who we want to come back and live in Jeffco, we have to ask ourselves, is this fair? Is it really going to build the future schools that we need? Right here in Arvada, the 2016 bond ask had Parr Elementary, for example, being totally rebuilt. That's not in this package. Ralston Valley High School, which we know is going to be the feeder school for a lot of that growth in Northwest Arvada, gets less money for expansion than Pomona, Stanley Lake, and Arvada. This is just not fair to our children and our grandchildren. And you guys all know from buying your own houses that there's only so much debt that you can encumber, right? So if we say yes to this one, when they come back and we need that expansion at Ralston Valley High School, will we be able to do that? I'll be out in the hallway. I encourage you to say no on 5A and 5B. Send the school board back to the drawing board and come back to us with something that's fair and builds a great future. Thanks for having us.
All right, Arvada Fire Income Stabilization is up next, and our proponent is Mike Piper.
Yes. Cammie, just so you know, the city didn't use all their time, so they're giving us an extra couple minutes. I'm Bob Leverage, president of the Arvada Fire Protection Board. Chief Greer would love to be here today. Well, I wouldn't say that because he scheduled a vacation over a year ago to the Bahamas. So with me today is our Deputy Chief Mike Piper. He is a native of Arvada. How many generations?
Our kids are sixth generation.
His kids are sixth generation. He has been with the fire district for 27 years. He is over our operations. And so if you like what goes on out there on the streets with our firefighters, you can thank Mike. He's also a graduate of Arvada West, which is a better school than Chief Greer went to. He was also inducted to the Hall of Fame at Arvada West this last year. So we'll turn some time over to Mike.
Good morning, thanks for having us. I am not going to tell you how to vote on 6A because I'm on duty, and to do so would be a violation of the Fair Campaign Practices Act. We have a new police chief who's really tough on crime here, and I think it would be bad if I left this stage in a pair of handcuffs. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our fire department, and telling you how you should vote is where Bob comes in. Looking at 2017, we responded to 15,000 911 calls. Most of our calls are calls for emergency medical services. The modern fire department is mostly a provider of emergency medical services. It's a fact. We run our ambulance service in our community, and we transported 8,000 patients to the hospital last year, responded to 64 structure fires, and training is a very important part of our culture. You expect us to be competent when we arrive at emergencies, and we expect our workforce to be competent. We logged 53,999 training hours last year. Why we couldn't squeeze one more training hour out of our workforce so I could say 54,000, I don't know. We'll try that this year. So the Insurance Services Organization rates fire departments from 1 to 10, 1 being the best rating and 10 being essentially no fire protection at all, and you enjoy the insurance premium benefits of having a fire department that is in the top 3% in the country according to ISO's rating system. We're also internationally accredited, just one of 249 fire departments in the country who are accredited. Less than 10% of the United States are protected by accredited fire departments. We are one. We want to maintain that. We provide a very comprehensive set of services to the community. I would challenge anyone to find a fire department in the state that provides more services than we do, and we provide these services 24/7, 365, just like responding to 911 calls. So the problem that we're having is we live in a bedroom community. Our capacity to collect taxes would be greater if we had more commercial development, which I know our community is working hard towards. But the residential assessment rate, which determines the portion of your home which is subject to taxation for property tax, in 1982 was 21%. It's continued to drop since then. It dropped again in 2017 to 7.2%, and so that year we saw a decrease in revenue that we otherwise would have got of $1.75 million. It's projected to drop again, as was previously mentioned, and if that occurred, it would result in a $3 million decrease in revenue against what we otherwise would have got. All of that's taken place while our call volume has increased 18% in the last 5 years. So when we have revenue reductions and call volumes increasing, we're trying to balance that.
So, what are we concerned about? Number one, these cuts could endanger our response times. That is so critical that we get there as quickly as possible. Secondly, we're meeting growing demands for emergency services with the growth in the city, but that's not the big place. Where our biggest call volume is in the older part of Arvada. Providing training. How critical is that? We have to be fully prepared for any situation. You don't go to an emergency half prepared. And that's with equipment, whatever. I've had to change my thinking a little bit because I've always wanted the biggest bang for the buck. But we cannot go there half prepared. That's why we send a lot of equipment many times. So, the other thing, if we cannot keep up with the demands, we could lose our ISO rating, which would mean higher homeowners insurance rates. So, we do have 6A on the ballot. It'll help stabilize our funding resources. This is the critical slide right here. So, line 1, what we want you to look at is where we're at right today. Is the residential rate 7.2? You're paying us $106 a year for every 100,000. I know your house isn't worth that, but do the math. If it does not pass, we're dropping to 6.11 residential rate. Whoop, what did I just do? Bottom line is, you'll pay, if it doesn't pass, you'll pay us 90 per 100. Then, if it does pass, we want to maintain that 106 a year per 100,000 that you're paying us. If the residential rate goes up, we'll reduce our mill levies. We're trying to adjust that mill levy to keep that 106. Cammie's telling me to stop, but complete your ballot from the bottom up. Bottom up for safety. So thank you.
All right, Bob and Mike, we want to thank both of you. Certainly quite a bit for all of us to consider as we open our mail ballots. It's such a great thing in Colorado as well as they start arriving in the mail. And we also want to appreciate how much goes into running some of these campaigns. So we're grateful for all of the volunteers and everyone who has shown so much passion on both sides of these ballot questions that we will all face. Thank you for the passion for our community. We've offered the campaigns an opportunity, as you've heard, to put up a table in the lobby, so as you make your way out at the end of this morning's forum, you'll have an opportunity to ask some specific questions. Maybe some things came up as you watch the presentations. Next on the agenda is a brief meet and greet for our candidates for Congressional District 7. My pleasure to invite Congressman Ed Perlmutter up for a 5-minute overview on his campaign and plans for Colorado. Congressman?
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank Cammie, Jim, and especially Mark McGough for inviting me today. I want to give you a little background about me. Many of you know me, but many of you don't. I want to talk to you a little bit about my life here in Jefferson County, go over a few of the priorities that I have if I am lucky enough to return to Congress and represent this area. So, first of all, and then we can talk about ballot issues if I still have time. So, Cammie, give me about 25 minutes. My name's Ed Perlmutter. I have lived in Jefferson County my whole life. Went to public schools here in Jefferson County, then to the University of Colorado undergrad and law school. I practiced law for 25 years downtown in a business law firm which specialized in real estate, construction, representing financial institutions of all kinds. And I was there until I was elected to Congress for the 7th Congressional District in 2006. My wife is a public school teacher, who many of you know. Nancy is a teacher at Stanley Lake High School here in Arvada. We live in Arvada. We have 6 kids between us. All of them are Jeffco Public Schools graduates, and I can happily say all of them are gainfully employed. When I was elected to Congress in 2006, before that I had served for 8 years in the state Senate, representing Lakewood, Wheat Ridge, Arvada, and Golden, and served on the Judiciary Committee, served on the Transportation Committee, served on a variety of special committees involving water, etc. I sat out for 4 years as our kids were continuing to go through school, and then I ran for Congress in 2006. Since that time, I have been fortunate enough to be reelected 6 times. I have served on the Financial Services Committee, which goes with my experience as a lawyer working in the financial services arena. I've been on that committee the whole time. I've served on the Banking Subcommittee, the Insurance Subcommittee, the Stock Market Subcommittee, and currently I'm the ranking Democrat on terrorism and illicit finance, which involves sanctions against North Korea, Iran, China, Russia, and also illicit finance, which would be money laundering, cryptocurrencies, hacking, those kinds of things. I've also served on the Homeland Security Committee, the Rules Committee, and I currently am also on the Science Committee, where I serve on the Space Subcommittee and the Oversight Subcommittee. And in Colorado, and especially in Jefferson County, we enjoy a tremendous aerospace industry as well as science. So in Colorado, we're either number 1 or number 2 per capita in aerospace jobs, and we're number 1 in the country per capita with national laboratories. So NREL, NCAR, the NIST laboratories. So from a local perspective, sitting on that science committee, which also fits a passion of mine, is very big in terms of our industry here. Now, I go, as I said, my wife is a teacher here in Jefferson County, math teacher. So I go back and forth to DC every week, and probably in the 12 years that I've been serving the 7th Congressional District, I've spent maybe 10 weekends or 11 weekends in Washington. And most of those were early on when we dropped into the recession, and we had to deal with, keeping the banking system afloat and getting the country back on its feet. And so my experience in the financial services arena really came to bear at that time. Now, I have 3 priorities that I'd really like to see me able to work on for you. The first one is infrastructure. So we've talked about transportation, and I obviously support the transportation measure that's on the ballot, Let's Go Colorado. I don't support the other one. We need to be investing in our infrastructure. We enjoy this fantastic economy, and yet we've got side effects. One of those we see in our roads and bridges, but also our waterworks. Westminster's had some trouble with its water systems. And so infrastructure is one. Workforce development is also a key to something I want to work on. Certifications, the ability of people to have lifelong learning. So our education system is key, K through 12, but it is also key as we go through life and things change. So my name's Ed Perlmutter. I know many of you. I ask for your vote. I would appreciate you returning me to Congress this year. Thank you very much.
What Congressman Perlmutter didn't mention is that he and Mark Barrington are running for what is usually called the worst job in Washington. Every 2 years you have to get back up and try and convince voters again and again, whereas on the Senate side, Corey gets 6 years in between, right? Let's hear for Mark Barrington now as he makes his way up and some of his ideas on why his plans for Colorado earn your vote. Mr. Barrington?
First, I want to read a statement. Thank you to a lesson I learned from my mom that taught me before she passed was that people can disagree and not be disagreeable. This past weekend, a group of folks got very disagreeable. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time with people fighting, and I wasn't sure what to do. The police told me to get behind them, and I did. I thought about my wife and my children, as you would expect, and it just reinforced the need for us, as each of us, to reject violence, not only here in CD7, but across the country, and to work hard to respect one another. Again, thank you for all those that showed up this morning, who show the respect. I appreciate you keeping all of us in your prayers and each of our candidates and our families. Now, why am I here? I'm here because I want to tell you about myself. My name is Mark Barrington. I'm running for the United States Congress in District 7. I'm 39 years old. I'm a small business owner. I know what it takes to sign both sides of the paycheck. I'm a husband and a dad. My wife is a teacher here in Jefferson County. My sons, Patrick and Oliver. Patrick turns 6 and Oliver turns 3 this next month. I've co-chaired the Jefferson County Prayer Breakfast for many years, and the accountability chair for my son's school, Glennon Heights School, and also the chair for Watchdogs, which is a volunteer dad's program. This morning, I want you to imagine and envision what a new face in Congress will look like 10 years from now, in 2029, after a congressman has self-imposed term limits. First of all, let's talk about the tax cuts, especially here in Arvada. Perfect place is the Chamber of Commerce. Now, to some people in Washington, they said that it was crumbs. But to my wife and I, $100 a month was a week of groceries to our family. How many families are out there that are like that have seen the benefits of that? Especially here in the Chamber of Commerce. The second thing is healthcare. Let's talk about healthcare. My wife, again, she's a teacher. Our deductible was $5,000 last year. It jumped to $7,000. This is one of the largest teaching districts in the state. How does it go so high, but yet I'm not going to be impacted? I was also told that I was going to be able to keep my doctor. I couldn't do that. And my son had to go to the hospital a few months ago. Our bill was over $4,000 for just a few stitches. We still didn't meet our deductible. It's time, 10 years from now, you have a congressman that puts a flat rate policy where you can see what you pay for when you go to the doctor's office. It's time that you allow insurance companies to compete across state lines. Finally, transportation. We have a huge issue with transportation in CD7 and population growth. As your congressman, I want to sit on the Transportation Committee to show that we are a growing community. But I also want to address the concerns of surface transportation and why the light rail still is not finished. But I've also noticed that the horns are really loud here in Arvada. How many of you have noticed that? When you're sitting there trying to have a cup of coffee and the trains are every 15 minutes blasting those loud horns. It's an important thing that we face here in CD7. My name is Mark Barrington. I'm running as your congressman to bring back drive and determination and energy, and I want to shake things loose in Washington, D.C. My website is Barrington for Colorado. That's barringtonforcolorado.com. And this November, I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrington. Congressman Perlmutter, we appreciate your time and talent towards this process, and we want to thank everyone for another informative forum here with the Arvada Chamber of Commerce. I now want to invite up my good friend, and yours too, Tammy Welch, to conclude this morning's forum.
Can we give Jim another round of applause? He does such a great job for us. So I will encourage all of you to go visit out there. This was a new format for us. I'm always open to your feedback around that. But I know that after you heard both sides of the presentation, I'm sure there's questions for you. So that's why it was incredibly important to us to make sure you have that opportunity to ask questions. So I will ask all of our speakers and campaigns to go ahead and head out to your tables to give you a little bit of a head start in the crowd here. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We love doing these breakfasts and appreciate all of you joining us bright and early on the third Friday of the month to learn a little bit more about your community. Have a wonderful day.